It is 6:55. I would like to call this meeting to order, this Board of Civil Authority meeting. First on our agenda are any additions and deletions to this meeting. Seeing that we don't have any, we're going to move on to the minutes from May 3rd, 2023. Is there a motion?
Make a motion to approve minutes.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
If everyone will please review the minutes at this time. Do you notice anything? Did anyone notice anything? All those who approve the minutes from May 3rd, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say no. Any abstentions? Okay. We are now moving into public comment, and town has received 2 letters, and as chair, I will be reading both letters. The first letter that I would like to read into public comments was received on June 2nd, 2023. It is addressed to Bruce Duchesne. As Select Board Chair, you should know the following. The solar system at the house on 2126 Wallingford Pond Road is in place and operational, and the power line has been run from the system to the house. The electrician is planning to be at the house next week to connect the wires to the electric box. When that is done, I'll be able to connect to Starlink broadband internet and send emails and make phone calls on the computer. Kevin Hollebeek, my engineer and owner of Belmont Septic, has dug the test pits to examine the soils and determine if the land perks. Yesterday, he told me that he picked up some documents at the town clerk's office and surveyed the property last week, and he hopes to finalize the septic design this week with a couple of signature pages for the permit application. Parker Well Service is going to give me a call tomorrow to set a date to visit the property and give me a date as to when they will be able to drill a well there. After that is all in place, propane will be brought in to run the stove, refrigerator, and heaters. Sincerely, Bruce Moreton. The second letter I have to read in is dated, here it is. This one is dated June 5th, 2023. Dear members of the Wallingford BCA, thank you for continuing to work towards bringing the issue of Bruce Moreton claiming residency in Wallingford to proper resolution, despite the best efforts of a handful of elected officials and other citizens of our town to kick this can down the road to oblivion. Bruce Moreton has misrepresented facts and attributed quotes to others that he distorted to any version that suited him from the beginning, starting on November 3rd, 2021, with telling me he would be moving from Depot Street to his camp in East Wallingford, not mentioning that he actually had moved to Rutland the month before, to now claiming he lived at his camp for half of 2022, yet couldn't complete the upgrades by fall. In between, in early 2022, registered his dog here, saying he was still living on Depot Street and would be moving to East Wallingford when the house he had been renting sold, again when he actually had moved to Rutland. On March 25th, 2022, in his response to the challenge letter our town clerk sent to him 2 days earlier, he referenced plans to upgrade his remote cabin that he had built over 2 decades previously to make it a year-round residence by that fall, and was allowed to remain on the Wallingford checklist. On April 6, 2022, following my public comment at a Mill River board meeting and after being prodded by the chair to respond, Mr. Moreton stated, "I am a resident of Wallingford according to the Secretary of State. I was in Montpelier earlier that day and stopped into the Secretary of State's office to discuss this matter. I can assure you that the above quote was filtered through what Mr. Moreton wanted it to say." On January 18th, 2023, a Wallingford representative to the Mill River Board, Nick Flanders, noted that any action by the Wallingford BCA to Mr. Moreton's response to the challenge letter in March of 2022 was still pending, which prompted me to request that the BCA meet again to continue the process. When the BCA met February 15th, 2023, Mr. Moreton had not moved to 2126 Wallingford Pond Road, had made little progress towards upgrading his cabin, and had not even applied for the necessary permits to do so. And yes, there were several required, both state and town, to change a primitive camp into a residence. Given that the BCA removed Mr. Moreton from the checklist, this was the first meeting and the first action by the board since the issuance of the challenge letter nearly a year earlier, yet some contended and still do that another challenge letter needed to be issued. It seems their position is that every time Bruce Moreton fails to fulfill promises, he needs to be challenged again. Kick the can. Bruce Moreton could and should have appealed the BCA decision at no cost to him to a superior judge pursuant of 17 VSA 2148, but instead sent a letter to Bruce Duchesne, chair of the Wallingford Select Board, threatening legal action. We all know what transpired following that, flouting the tenets of open meeting law at the Select Board meeting of February 21st, hush and rush tactics to convene another BCA meeting, misinformation, misquotes, scare tactics, bullying, and suppression of public input, and Bruce Moreton was returned to the checklist on March 2nd, 2023 at a meeting that should have never happened. BCA member Gary Fredette asked for a follow-up meeting to clear up the above-mentioned misstatements. The BCA met on May 3rd, 2023, and voted to ask a judge to consider the facts of this case, which had been circumvented by interference by the Select Board on February 21st. At the May 3rd meeting, Bruce Duchesne stated that he didn't care if Bruce Moreton was living at his camp illegally, an incredible thing for somebody elected to represent us to say, and even more so considering he is in a leadership role. At the same meeting, Lynn Edmonds opined that Mr. Moreton isn't moving fast enough for some of us. I'll count myself in that group. He pledged to be living at 2126 Road by the fall of 2022, let's say mid-October, so a year after moving to Rutland, and the best part of 8 months ago now, we are still hearing the same plans as we heard in March of 2022, except that he has some solar power almost installed and has finally started to talking about a septic system. Mr. Edmonds still sees a need for another challenge letter at this time to access the status of his progress. Why not just arrange a site visit so there won't be a need to try and separate fact from fiction? And there has been a good deal of fiction. In addition to all of the above documents provided by Bruce Moreton, misquoted an employee at the Vermont Department of Environmental Conservation and our own zoning administrator, the latter in a signed affidavit. This highlights a huge issue. Some members of the BCA hang their hats on Mr. Moreton signing legal documents as if that makes it all chiseled in stone. This came to mind after watching a 60 Minutes story Sunday night about social media harming our children. An 11-year-old was able to access sites simply by checking a box attesting that she was 13. Checking that box did not make her 13 any more than Mr. Moreton signing off on statements makes them true. Now we have had to seek a legal opinion on a question we already know the answer to, and there is talk of considerable expense to the taxpayers of Wallingford to upgrade and maintain WP Road for this man. Please revert back to the decision of February 15th, remove Bruce Moreton from the Wallingford checklist, and let him ask a judge if that action was proper, as it would have been if due process had been followed. As two BCA members observed at the May 3rd meeting, this process could go on and on unless we get back on track of the BCA taking responsibility for their role in this matter and letting Mr. Moreton pursue an appeal through the applicable statute. or reapply to be on our checklist when he has an actual residence here. Thank you for your time and consideration, Ken Fredette. Now, with these two letters being read into the record, I think we have a recollection of what has happened so far. And we will have a public comment from people on the floor. I would like to say that if we could keep our comments germane, and also make sure that our comments are adding new information and are a reiteration of what I just read into the record. Okay, so public comments.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ken Fredette from Wallingford. I'm going to have to try to make sure I don't repeat anything. I was not going to read that. I just wanted the board members to have it available and maybe be attached to the minutes. So that was my first statement, but thank you for reading it anyways. What I will say tonight is that none of us needs to be here. None of us needed to be here on May 3rd, and none of us needed to be here on March 2nd. A challenge letter was issued March 23rd, 22.
I'm just going to say I've read all that.
Okay.
Is there anything, Mr. Fredette, that you would like to say that is,
Well,
will add further light?
I'll just go to my last sentence.
Okay.
Well, yeah, it's one long sentence. The BCA owns this. Please do the right thing tonight. Remove Bruce Moreton from our checklist. He can appeal that decision and perhaps be put back on the checklist or perhaps not. But in any case, he can be put back on the checklist if and when he establishes a bona fide legal residence in this town, not just make promises that he will. Thank you.
Other public comments? Thank you very much. Are there any other public comments at this time? So moving on, our next item is to review Attorney G. Kupferer's legal opinion on voter residency for Bruce Moreton. We have here a letter addressed to Julie Sharon, our town clerk. Do I need to read this at this time? Okay. So the letter is as follows. Dear Julie, you have asked me that I review the actions of the Board of Civil Authority and advise as to the appropriate process going forward. I understand the following facts. In March 2022, residents notified the board that Mr. Moreton was serving on the Mill River School Board while appearing to no longer be a resident in Wallingford. The board addressed the issue at a meeting and as a result sent a challenge letter to Mr. Moreton. A response from him to the challenge letter indicated that while temporarily housed in Rutland, Mr. Moreton intended to return to Wallingford and reside at his camp property. Mr. Moreton indicated he was in the process of converting the camp to a four-season residence. With this, no removal occurred. In February 2023, residents again brought the issue to the board and asserted that Mr. Moreton was not residing at the camp through the past winter and sought to have Mr. Moreton removed from the checklist. The board removed Mr. Moreton from the checklist and sent a notice of removal. Mr. Moreton responded to the notice asserting that he resided at the camp more than 180 days per year and again indicated his intent to remain a Wallingford resident. Based upon that response and concerns of whether the correct process, i.e. a new challenge letter, was followed, the board voted to reinstate Mr. Moreton to the checklist. At that meeting, a motion was made and carried to inquire if the issue could be removed from the board and decided by a court. The board has authority over the checklist pursuant to statute. While recourse to a court may be an option in certain circumstances, as discussed in brief below, there is no procedure for the board to delegate that authority to a court. The question of residency includes the subjective component of an individual's intent to reside in a particular town. That intent must be accompanied by actions evidencing the intent. Of particular importance to a board's decision is the presumption in favor of inclusion on the checklist. 7 VSA 2150, removing names from checklist. The the provisions of this chapter shall be liberally construed, so that if there is any reasonable doubt whether a person's name should have been removed from the checklist, the person shall have the right to have the person's name immediately returned to the checklist. The board was well within its statutory authority to include Mr. Moreton on the checklist. In the event of an individual who has been removed from the checklist is dissatisfied, they can appeal to the Superior Court under 17 VSA 2148. Only the voter removed has an appeal of right under that statute. A third party would be required to file an action under VRCP 75. In short, the board needs to do nothing at this time. If you should have any questions, please do not hesitate to give me a call. Sincerely, Gary R. Kupferer, and it was also CC to Sandy Switzer. So our thing now is to review this and then to take action on what has been on the illegal opinion. Yes.
I'd like to make a motion that we accept the town attorney's findings in this matter.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
In other words, we have his letter in front of us. We're accepting his letter. That's all we asked him to do, and that's what we're here to discuss.
I don't know why we have to do that, but sure.
But that's what we're here for, right?
Not to accept his letter,
We're here to discuss his findings. His findings, that's what we were here for.
so what are you saying his findings are?
What she just read in the letter. Everything is legit, so he did what he was supposed to do. So my thing is that we accept his letter as written and move on.
And follow his recommendation that we need to do nothing at this time.
Is there any discussion?
Yes. There's a lot of discussion that should happen here. In his letter, for one thing, Mr. Moreton indicated he was in the process of converting a camp to a four-season residence. We know, based on the letter we got recently, that he has not done that. Mr. Moreton signed an affidavit saying that 2126 Wallingford Pond Road is his permanent legal residence. A seasonal camp cannot be a permanent legal residence. That's just law. He claims he lived there for 180 days. If he did do that, he was violating the law, because that camp is not suitable for year-round residents, based on Mr. Moreton's own words. So we can go back. We can start with his challenge letter response from 3/22, where he explains that he had to leave his home in Wallingford because the person was going to sell the house. I get that. He could not find a place to live. He had to move to Rutland. I understand. Housing is tight. That makes sense. He says, until I could move into the two-bedroom, fully insulated house that we had built at our boys' camp. Okay, good. He goes on to say, I plan to move to camp full-time beginning in the fall. So he was not living at the camp, but he claims it's fully insulated. Okay. In March of 2023, which was a year later when I came on the board, this case was still open, pending, nothing had happened. So Mr. Moreton claimed once again that he wants to be clear that his permanent residence is a seasonal camp, 2126 Wallingford Pond Road. I've owned that property since 1999 and built a two-bedroom, fully insulated house. Okay, we get it, it's fully insulated. In his next paragraph, he says, I was forced to spend my last 2 winters in Rutland until the winterizing of my house is completed. Well, which is it? It's either fully insulated or it's not. So, we get to 4/29/23, the second most recent letter from Mr. Moreton, where he talks about meeting with various people. He had a great conversation with someone. I'm glad to hear that. Familiar with the property on Wallingford Pond Road. I explained to him that I am in the process of converting a seasonal house there to one that could be lived in year-round. Does this sound to any of us like a house he could have lived in for 180 days? It does not to me. It's a seasonal camp. That's not even legal. Brings us to the most recent letter from Mr. Moreton that was read out loud today. The engineer, he's gone to do some perks. Clerk's office surveyed the property last week, and he hopes to finalize the septic system, the septic design this week with a couple of signature pages for the permit application. Mr. Moreton told us in one of his previous letters that he had talked to the zoning administrator who made it clear he needed no permits. So which is it? Does he need permits? Doesn't he need permits? He is applying for a permit application for septic. That means the house does not have septic. Parker Well Service is going to give me a call tomorrow to set a date to visit the property and give me a date as to when they will be able to drill a well there. He has no water there either. So my question is, are we all just going to accept that 2126 Wallingford Pond Road, which is listed as a seasonal camp, is somehow also able to be a permanent residence, though it has no running water and no septic system? As far as I can see, Mr. Moreton himself has told us that this house, at this current stage, is a camp that he is busy converting to someday being able to be a permanent residence. And I say great to that. And I say when he is done building that, he can be on our checklist. Until that time, he's not a legal resident. He has no legal residence in Wallingford. Therefore, I do not understand why we would not remove him from our checklist, and then, instead of violating due process, which is what he did when he decided to go to the select board and threatened to sue our town, instead of following due process, which meant he had every right to go to an attorney, to go to a judge and adjudicate this case, he chose not to. I wonder why he did that, why he did not take this to a judge when he had every right to do so. Instead, he went to the select board. I think that in any case like this, without fear or favor, we must look at the facts and determine that this person does not have a legal residence in Wallingford, has been living outside of our town for over a year and a half now, and therefore should be removed from the checklist. And I will say the final thing, the lawyer may have said those things. That does not mean that he knew all the facts of the case. It doesn't mean that his decision is final, and basically what that lawyer said was that it is up to the BCA to make this determination, not him.
Thank you. Any other discussion at this time?
Yeah, I kind of disagree with the assessment that Mr. Tesser here has made about this letter, or Mr. Litzon, this letter tells us we shouldn't do anything else. This letter to me tells me that what we've done is what we've done, and there's nothing else to do about that. We're dead in the water. But it also says that if we can take him off the checklist, the board is well within its statutory authority to include Mr. Moreton on the checklist. In the event the individual has been removed from the checklist or is dissatisfied, they can appeal this. We also have the authority to take him off the checklist. If we take him off the checklist, that means that the judge can make that decision. So I don't feel that I think the lawyer gave us exactly what we asked for. We asked for what our avenue is to get this case to the judge, and he told us right there that he has the ability, Mr. Moreton has the ability to take this to a judge and have it taken care of. I mean, we can just say, well, we'll accept this, not do anything else, give the can another kick. We can come back here and meet again because, well, if somebody wants to petition. But the truth of the matter is, Mr. Moreton has made a lot of assertions of all these things that he's going to do. Everything is in the future that's going to be done, just as it was as I looked at the previous letter that he sent before on the challenge letter that was sent to him. I'm going to do this, I'm met with Procter Gas, I'm going to do that. The letter that he just sent us is he's going to, the solar panels are hooked up, and they are hooked up to the house. One thing that's very important is that solar panel has nothing to do, I mean, yeah, he'll put electricity in his house, but he's got no water, no sewer, or anything else. That'll give, and he even points out, it gives him the ability to hook up his Starlink so he can have his computer up there. But, you know, the thing that we all have to keep in mind is that's Mr. Moreton's business up there. starting January 2nd until August 12th, he runs his camp up there, charges kids $1,400 a week to stay there. He kind of has to have that Starlink and that computer and the telephone because when those people that send their kids up here from New Jersey want to talk to their kids, or their kids want to talk with their parents, you kind of have to have a little communications up there. He's not putting, he's not, his biggest rush on all of this thing, not sewer, not water, was I've got to get my computer hooked up. Because come July 2nd, his camp starts up there, and he's gonna need some communication to talk to those people, and those people are gonna talk to him. So, that's what I think the whole big deal, that's the only thing he's got done on his list of anything he's gonna do. He's gonna meet with the people that are gonna drill the well, the engineer is the engineer is still getting paperwork to file for a state permit. So, that tells me that he's not gonna live there this year either. He certainly isn't gonna. Is he going to get this done in time to move in November? Have you ever been up on the end of Wallingford Pond Road at the end of November? I'd rather move into Siberia, to be perfectly honest with you. So he's not, I can't even believe he's even going to live there again this year. So that's going to make it 2 full years that he hasn't been a resident, hasn't had residency in the town of Wallingford. But we still want to kick this can down the road. I think very simply, I think we should take him off the checklist, let him file this with the judge, let the judge say, well, you know what? Well, you've been kicking this down the road for 2 years. Intent isn't just saying you're going to do something. Intent is something more than just setting up a solar panel. That's all he's done. He set up somebody set up a solar panel. That's all that's happened up there. So I've been going up there for over the last month. I go up there probably 3 or 4 times a week. One day, 3 weeks ago, on a Sunday afternoon, the gate was open to go up into his area. So a person that's so intently trying to get moved in and get his camp ready so he can move in it, hasn't even been up there. I mean, maybe I'm at the wrong time. I go up in the morning, I go up in the afternoon. I don't go up to spy on him. I go up to him because supposedly there's been a moose up there that they thought was going to calve, and I've been up there trying to watch the moose and see what's going to happen. So we've been going up and watching for that. And I go up there a lot anyway. I go up there to check on family property that's up there. So that's why I'm up there. But you know what? He hasn't been up there now either. So his intent is all verbal. But here we go again. We want to accept that we don't have to do anything else. Sit back and I guess what would be the next, I guess if we accepted this letter is he wants us to do and do nothing at all, then we're accepting the fact that he doesn't have to have residency in Wallingford. He can continue to be on the checklist and we'll just, what, forever? Because, so I just, like I said, I think my motion would be to take him off the checklist, let him bring it in front of a judge, let the judge decide you either live in Wallingford or you don't live in Wallingford. He can always come back on his checklist. He can still vote. I'm not sure why he wants to stay on the checklist. I guess it's not for the purpose of voting because he didn't vote the last time. So I guess it's probably, I'm guessing the part of the thing that enters in here is to stay on the school board. Well, I guess that's his prerogative, and I guess if we want to choose to let him stay on the prerogative, to live in Rutland and be on the school board, we can do that. But I guess that's all I got right now.
Yes.
I have a question for Julie.
Okay.
Julie, is he a responsible taxpayer? Is he current with all his taxes? Thanks.
But paying taxes has nothing to do with it. You have to have legal residency. Because one of the board members on this board has told me twice that they think that if you pay taxes in Wallingford, you should be able to vote here anyway. That's truly not the way, that's not the way the law reads. That's not the way the rules read.
Well, paying taxes is being a responsible citizen.
But it's not being a resident. Not being a resident.
Being a responsible person.
But
How is that relevant?
that still doesn't make you a resident. That doesn't make you eligible to be on the checklist if you're a responsible person.
Did I say it did?
No. Huh?
And I think we can,
It's just
Have your statement?
judgment to his character.
Oh.
It seems that is a responsible thing to do.
Thank you very much.
So my motion had one thing to do. The last two meetings we had, we voted to keep him on the checklist. So if people don't accept that, that's fine. We also at the last meeting asked to have the attorney look to see what our options were, and he came back and said, these are our options. All I'm saying is we're accepting his letter with our options, as stated. That is all I'm saying. I'm not saying he's a legal voter. I'm not saying he should be on or off the checklist. All I'm saying is our purpose tonight is to review the letter. I'm making the motion that we accept the letter from the attorney as his findings. In other words, that's all I'm saying. I don't care if you make a motion after this to remove him off the checklist. All I'm saying is we accept his findings. That's our purpose to be here tonight.
So there's a motion on the floor. Is there any more discussion on this motion?
I don't understand the motion, frankly, because first he said it was to do with accepting what he said about leaving him on the checklist, so
From
I
what I
don't.
heard Mr. Tessier say, he said to accept the motions.
My original said to accept the findings
Yes.
of the town's attorney.
To take no more action, but to
Well,
take
that
no-
says
but
it-
that's what you said.
But that's in the findings. That's in his findings.
So if we're accepting that to take no more actions, then we can't turn around and say, okay, now we would like to take him off the checklist, because we accepted his act, he was checked with what he told us. So
Well,
you
he's
can't
saying we
have it both ways.
don't, we don't have to take any more action. We can if you want, I don't care. But it's saying we don't have to. I think it's the way I'm.
And I don't know, I don't know what he's saying on, we don't have to take any more action on what? That's the only part that I don't understand. Was he saying what we've done and what's happened and is done, so we don't have to do anything more about that, this is done, but we still have the option to do what the BCA is supposed to do, and that is have somebody to be on our checklist to legally be a resident of the town of Wallingford. That is our charge, the BCA.
It's also what he said in the letter. The board has authority over the checklist pursuant to statute. That's our responsibility, not his responsibility.
He's just,
Right. So I'm just saying, we're accepting his letter. That's basically what I'm saying, because that is our purpose of being here tonight. Am I not
Are you
wrong?
accepting that he wrote us a letter? I mean, I accept that we got a
So the
letter.
last meeting, I made the motion to send this to the town's attorney for his opinion on what to do next. We have his opinion.
Yes.
So all I'm saying is, we're accepting his opinion, and we put the last meetings, the second, our purpose to be here tonight, to rest. Our purpose to be here tonight was to read and review the letter that the attorney sent us. I'm saying we read and reviewed the letter that the attorney sent us, and we're accepting that we have read and reviewed the letter.
You know, I don't remember who said it, but I remember there was asked of Gary, and I don't, maybe even Nan, that if the attorney came back and said that we could not take this to court, you would accept that.
no, we asked for what avenue.
No, that's what you said. You said you would accept whatever the attorney told us. Now you're arguing against it.
No, I'll watch it again.
We've got two motions on the floor.
We have two
No, we
motions.
don't.
No, Gary made one.
He can't make
He
a
can't
motion.
make a
We got
motion
one on the
until the-
floor.
So-
I did not hear Gary make a motion. I think we only have one motion on the floor, and that is Mark's motion.
Okay, could we vote on that? Because I
Yes.
think we're just arguing and not accomplishing anything.
Yes.
Until I understand whether you are saying that what he says here about leaving him on the checklist, I can't vote on this. I need to have clarity over what exactly you're suggesting.
Okay, what I'm suggesting is, you read this letter.
Yes.
These are the findings of our attorney.
It's of the opinion of our.
Of the opinion of our attorney. That's all I'm saying. Our purpose to be here tonight is to review his opinion from the last meeting.
Correct.
So all I'm saying is, to make it simple, we accept his findings.
I don't see why we have to, I don't know.
Well, then what's our point of being here if we're not gonna accept our his findings?
Because we wanted to be able to talk about these findings. That's what it was all about, to discuss what the findings were. And my discussion is the fact that what I see, I read different than you, and my thing is that I think that what he's telling us to do, that, well, what we should do is probably let Mr. Moreton do this. So that's what my opinion is of this letter. Then vote no, right?
So can I ask for clarity? Is your motion to accept the findings of this letter, and there is a finding in this letter that the board has authority over the checklist pursuant to statute?
Which turns it back over to
That
us.
the board is well within its statutory authority to include Mr. Moreton on the checklist? That in short, his opinion is that the board needs to do nothing at this time, but that everything that this attorney has stated in this letter, we should accept.
Right,
Am I
I'm just
clear on
saying,
that?
we accepted the letter, that's what, how can I explain it? We asked the attorney for his recommendation. He gave us our recommendation, we either accept it or we deny it. That's all I'm saying.
Or we work with it.
I don't know that it's a recommendation, he's simply stating facts. He's not saying you should do this or you should do that. He's simply stating what the facts are. So I'm unsure of the necessity of the motion.
Okay, so,
But it's
Then don't know.
Okay.
all right, I'll withdraw my motion. And now I'm gonna make a motion that we take everybody off. I'd make a motion that we adjourn this meeting, because
That's what we're here for.
that's what we're here for. We're here to accept his letter. And if the motion that I made, we cannot accept his letter or deny his letter, then why are we here?
It says to.
We're here to discuss his letter, I agree.
Right.
Okay, do we have to
Okay.
accept this
It
to
says
discuss
we're
it?
here to review the letter. It doesn't say that we're just going to go ahead and,
But we reviewed his letter, and everything that I'm hearing has nothing to do with his letter. It all has to do with taking off the checklist. I'm confused on,
Well, honestly, the reason we asked for his opinion in the first place was to find out if it was possible for the BCA to hand this over to a judge, right?
right,
So he has said no.
Say no.
Exactly.
Right.
And then he
Right.
says the board has authority over the checklist pursuant to statute. So he is telling us, no, you can't take it to court, you have to make the decision. So you can make a motion to adjourn, but we're going to need another meeting because there is still someone on the checklist that we have questions about. So we can decide that tonight, we can
You can't,
work on
because
this.
it's not on the agenda.
Oh, fine, then we won't, we'll just come
can't.
back again.
It
I
has
would
to be
point
on
out,
the
however-
agenda to do that. Otherwise, you're violating the open meeting law.
Well, that wasn't a problem when, never.
Right.
so we have a motion to adjourn the meeting,
I'll second that.
okay?
Public comment?
We already did that. We did
Public
that.
comment to be heard before a vote.
Yes. We have heard public comment before a vote for. Yes,
You're gonna adjourn? You're gonna do nothing? Accept the letter? That's it? This is stuff that you knew, I told you about.
have you read the agenda?
yes, you may make a comment.
Madam Chair.
You may make a comment, but
right,
please
to
make this
you,
comment.
I'm gonna tell you,
Okay,
last time I was here, I suggested to you that the way to, because we cannot figure out, there's not enough guidance for us to tell if he's a resident or not. It needs to go by a judge. And the only way, and I told you last time, to make a motion to nullify the actions, the February 15th meeting that put him back on, because that meeting was a mistake, because it was by threatening letter and without enough information from the lawyer. Now you have the information. The information is nullify that meeting and go to court. Why can't you see that?
I think you mean March 2nd.
Huh?
I think you mean the
March 2nd meeting? meeting that should have never happened. That should have never happened. There was talk about a warned, open meeting, by the book meeting. That was, and then there was another one to undo it. And that was a mistake. We have to go back to where we were before, that he's off the checklist. And for you to walk away from it is irresponsible. I'm sorry.
So, we have.
Why is it irresponsible if in the last 2 meetings that we've had, we have voted, this board,
Talk to her.
this board has voted to keep him on the checklist for the last 2 meetings?
No?
Yes.
No?
Yes.
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 The last 2 meetings. The last 2 meetings, we have voted to keep him on the checklist. So, why can't that be the decision of the board? Why do we have to keep changing the decision of the
You
board?
don't know where he lives.
So, this is a decision, as in the attorney's letter, the board has the authority over the checklist. We will come to whatever decision we do this evening. If someone has a concern that someone does not have, should not be on the checklist, they can bring this up again. We can revisit this as many times as needs to be done, because it's with the BCA's authority to have authority over the checklist.
I agree, but the last 2 meetings, we have voted to keep him on the checklist.
And there are people who feel he should not be on, so it can keep coming up.
May I also point out that since those last 2 meetings, we've gotten new information from Mr. Moreton.
Okay?
Which
So-
isn't satisfactory for me.
I guess the problem I'm having is that the facts of this situation don't seem to matter to some people.
And-
Mr. Morton's letter
Right.
states
And
that he doesn't
Stephen,
live
I
there.
think you've stated that already this evening. Is there anything that you have not been able to say as of right now? Because we do have a motion on the floor, and
The motion is to end the meeting?
yes, right? The motion is to adjourn the meeting for the evening.
Okay, so the problem is if we vote to adjourn, then we get up and leave. And what
Yes.
I need to know is that there will be some, basically that we have another meeting to address this, because I do not understand why there are people in this room who are okay with his saying, I'm building the house, I'm putting in septic. He's been lying to us for quite a while now about having a fully insulated permanent residence. None of that's true, and I don't understand why there are people in this room who continue to support that, when Mr. Duchesne is the one who mentioned earlier that we set precedent here. So we are now setting precedent. If we decide to keep him on the checklist when we all know he doesn't live in town, I think we can all be clear based on his letters, his own words, that he doesn't live in town. If you're willing to keep him on the checklist, then what happens the next time this comes up? This is precedent we're setting here. That's all I want to say.
I would just like to emphasize in Gary's letter here, where he's stating, the question of residency includes the subjective component of an individual's intent to reside in a particular town. I believe Bruce has clearly shown his intent to reside in this town. Gary is telling us if an individual shows intent to live in town, the law states his residency is established.
But I don't believe that's true, actually. And can I explain why? If I'm building a house somewhere, I don't live there until I move to that house. So I don't understand what your point is, because Mr. Morton's building fixing up a camp in Wallingford while putting his head every night on a pillow in Rutland, which is part of what residency is all about. Are you saying anybody
If you start reading state statutes, it specifically says.
If you're saying anyone who's building a house here has residency already, I believe that is not factually accurate.
Well, we built our house, and yes, we did have residency here the 9 months we built.
Were you living in that house while you were building it?
We were living in Rutland.
so that's the same thing.
It's not,
But
honey, that isn't true, so don't bring that up.
Yeah, please.
But as long as you're not on the checklist of any other town, you can still be on the checklist.
In a town you don't live in.
Was-
That's interesting.
In some of the legal documents I've read, I don't remember which one that was, but it's clearly stated that where you put your head on a pillow every night does not determine residency.
What does?
That was in state statute, that states.
Well, the
It does.
biggest issue in all this that I can see, that I can read, is that you're not voting in two towns.
Correct.
This is all set up to prove you're not voting in two towns.
No, that's just not true.
Unfortunately, we're in a position where there's a group of townspeople that have a personal vendetta against
It's
a
also
person.
not.
Both sides. And we're dragging the town into this. And everybody's dragging the town into this personal matter. And I've had about enough of it. I don't know if anybody else has. But I think we should go to vote, because I think everybody's said everything at least twice.
I don't think everybody said what they wanted to say so far. I know he thinks so, but I don't. I, for the life of me, cannot figure out why as many people, well, first of all, I can't understand why Bruce feels that, Mr. Duchesne feels that he has proved his intent to him, so he wants to go ahead and let him stay on the checklist. The only thing he's done is he said, I'm going to do this. Classic example, let's say Bruce decides to move away and gives his house to his son, but he keeps a little corner where he's gonna put a trailer, where he could put a trailer if he wanted to. And he moves away, and he's away for a year, but he's the chairman of the select board. And he moves away and he's gonna do Zoom meetings. He says, I can do Zoom meetings, because Zoom meetings are happening a lot. But I'm living in Ohio, but I'm really gonna go back, and I talked to a guy about drilling a well down below my house to where I wanna put a trailer, and I'm gonna come back and do that. So, I should be able to stay on the select board as a chairman. And, that 6 months goes by and a year goes by, and the BCA meets again and said, well, he did say, he talked to a guy about putting in a septic tank too, and he's gonna have water put in, so it's been a year and a half now, but he still wants to stay on the select board because he's got a 4-year term. Well, we got nothing. Sure, you can do that. You can be our select board chairman. You can live in Ohio. You can come to a Zoom meeting. You can keep telling us that you're gonna move back, you're gonna have water, you're gonna have sewer, hell, you even put a solar panel down there in the tree, and so that's what makes it so weird to me. There's so many people that, there are many people on this board that are really feeling that they want to keep Mr. Moreton. I don't know Mr. Moreton. I've got nothing personal. There's no vendetta. The last time Kurt looked at me and said, why do you hate Mr. Moreton so much? There's nothing personal. The only thing personal with me is I'm trying to uphold the law. I'm trying to do what the BCA has been told to do. The BCA is supposed to keep the checklist honest. It's supposed to make sure that the people that are on the checklist live in Wallingford, that are residents. I see a person that hasn't lived in Wallingford for almost 2 years now, that's still on the voter checklist, can still come in here and vote. And I see so many people that are, one of them's totally fed up, that they're sick of having to fight this battle to keep him on that checklist. Well, it's very simple, very simple. Take him off the checklist, let the judge say, which he can go to for nothing, and let the judge say, well, hey, you should be left on that checklist, and the judge contact us and say, well, geez, you shouldn't have taken him off the checklist. Say, okay, we'll put him back on the checklist. I don't know what's the problem with that, but rather than do that, they would rather, because I'm telling you, if this meeting is canceled, or if we disband this meeting tonight, I'm immediately going to go to Julie, and I'm going to ask her to schedule, or to Bruce, or wherever I have to go to, I'm going to say, schedule the next meeting. Because we're going to come back, because we still have not done what we're supposed to do as a BCA. We're supposed to keep that checklist the way it's supposed to be. It is not the way it is. He hasn't, like Bruce could say, proving intent is because he put his solar panels up there and he talked to somebody, and he talked to somebody, and he talked to somebody. That's not intent, that's verbal. Intent is, okay, he's drilled his well. Who knows how long it's gonna, who knows how long it's gonna take to get a permit from the state of Vermont in order to put a bound system or a septic system up there? Might be 6 months, 8 months, might be next year that he can possibly do it. Who knows? When was the last time you tried to get a hold of a plumber and an electrician? But he's gonna make a phone call and gonna get one up there? Shit, you can't get an electrician in 6 months. I mean, so I just, you guys, a lot of you people wanna just kick this can down the road. I think we just put it, I'd like to be able to make the motion to give it, put it in the hands, to take him off the checklist, let him take it to the judge. I would think Mr. Moreton would like to take it to a judge and have this decided. I think he would like to have this over with too. And all he's gotta do is go to a judge and ask him to decide. But instead, we're gonna keep having these meetings every 2 weeks or every 4 weeks or whatever it is until this is finally solved. We can keep doing that, but like I said, I just considered today another kick the can down the road.
Julie, are we allowed to make a motion to vote on having Mr. Moreton on the checklist tonight or not? Open meeting law, are we allowed or not?
Yes.
I don't think so, but
I
I'm
don't think
asking.
so.
It said here to review the legal opinion. That's kind of vague. Whether we can go
And if you
ahead
couldn't,
and,
the judge will tell us, well, you couldn't do that. The judge, he's the legal person.
You can do it and find out if you can do it.
Right, we'll find out if somebody says, if the judge says
Get
it's good.
sued or not.
okay,
And sue isn't money, sue isn't just, it's just a, you can or you can't.
okay. So, we do have, is there something you would like to say at this time, Mr.?
I'll withdraw my adjournment meeting if somebody wants to make the motion to,
Okay,
I'd like to make a motion to remove Bruce Moreton from the voter checklist, to allow him the ability to take it to a judge and let the judge decide whether he is a legal resident or not of the town of Wallingford.
so we don't have any, Julie, we don't have any motions right now because the last motion's been withdrawn. Okay? So, we have a new motion. Do we have a second of this new motion?
I'll second.
Okay. Do we have discussion? Okay.
But you, actually, Kathy, I just
Yes.
would like to say that I also feel that this has been, the discrepancies, the incongruencies of what we've heard from Mr. Moreton have been mounting over the last year plus. And it just, I don't feel I can personally take his said intent to heart based on, I mean, the evidence just has been lacking. And I feel the only way to really get verified evidence is to have a judge, take that into account. I don't perhaps somebody can correct this for me. I don't see any mechanism the BCA has to judge evidence. And I think that's what we need at this point to make an informed decision about his residency. A court can do that.
so I have one more thing.
Yes.
If this gets voted not to remove him from the checklist tonight, or whatever reason, is this it? Or are we gonna be back here in 2 weeks?
Always do it. You do it every week.
Well, no.
But if we vote no, we won't be back ever.
But if
I
a
don't
judge,
understand.
but if a judge says you're wrong, that puts it to rest.
But why wouldn't the majority of the
What if the
voters
judge says they
on the
were
board
right? Are you
put
gonna,
it to
what if
rest?
the judge says he's right? We
If the
were
judge
right.
says he should be on the checklist, I absolutely will tell you in front of PEG TV and everybody else, I go along with that. Of course I go along with that. Who wouldn't?
Okay.
You don't have to decide.
But if a judge tells you that he should be taken off the checklist, Bruce, will you accept the fact that he should be taken off the checklist?
I would.
So
But
why
I
don't we
really-
let a judge do that? Why are we kicking this can? A judge can do it for Mr. Moreton for nothing.
Can we please,
For we've stated that already. I think we have a public comment.
I'm not addressing the situation so that the fact that I live out of town makes no difference. I have my own opinions of the situation. I do caution you that if you vote on something that you don't have on your agenda and it's not there for an action item, what's going to be adjudicated is the fact that you do this incorrectly.
Yeah.
So
That's
ask
what
our
I
meeting
tried to
to
say.
Julie's.
That's what I said.
Okay.
It's
Well,
not on
I'm
the
not saying
agenda.
don't vote on it, but tonight's not the night.
That begs the question of what the select board did on February 21st. It wasn't on the agenda. They went into executive session, they came out, they voted.
The executive session was on the agenda.
Yes,
You added it at the beginning of the meeting. It
No,
No,
it
it
was
wasn't.
already
It
on
was-
the
It
agenda.
was a public notice. Yes, it was, Kevin.
This is not,
Okay, but we could have added stuff to the beginning of this meeting too, right, number 2.
We could have, but we didn't.
But we didn't, so we can't cry about it now. We just have to reschedule a meeting and put what you want on the agenda so we can do it properly.
If we put it on the agenda at this meeting to take that vote, we couldn't take that vote, could we?
The judge is not gonna care whether you dotted your i's and crossed your t's, believe me. You take them off, send them a letter, he'll sue you. The judge will say, well, they didn't dot their i's and cross their t's, but they're not gonna take that into consideration.
I still think we ought to take Adrian's suggestion into account here.
Yes.
Just to be on the safe side, it makes sense to adjourn, reschedule a meeting when it can be warned that people can see that on the agenda.
okay, so would you at this time be willing to
Withdraw that?
withdraw your,
Yes, I would.
Motion?
Yes, I would.
okay. Do we
But I would
have,
also like to, at the same time, before we adjourn any meetings, make sure, ask Julie to warn a meeting for 2 weeks from tonight.
Or we can get a right amount of people here.
No, we don't need a fair amount of people. We only need 3 people here.
so,
So we don't have to poll how many people will be here. You don't have to have a certain number of people for a BCA meeting if you look in the handbook that Curtis has pointed out to.
I think right now we need to make a motion on the information that's been provided this evening. Do we have a motion?
To do what?
I make a motion to adjourn.
That motion.
Yes, so there is a motion to adjourn. Is there a second? Okay. All those in favor of adjourn?
Oh, don't we get to comment then?
Oh, yes, sorry, comment, yes.
Just a quick comment, just to make sure, Julie, you know, that I think because we are adjourning, and because we are adjourning since we want to make sure we do cross all our Ts and dot all our Is, that we will be taking up this issue again.
Because what happens is I don't want to be able to have, I guess probably as an individual, even as a member of BCA, I can't request another meeting. Either a select board member has to do it, or, so I just want to make sure, that's what I want to make sure, is that we can have another meeting in 2 weeks. And so we will be able, and on that agenda will be the ability to vote to remove Mr. Moreton from the town's checklist. That will give him enough time to get his lawyers to send us his letters, and we'll be good to go.
Is other business on this agenda?
No.
No.
No?
No. Okay. There is not under this agenda, so we have a motion. All those who approve adjourning this meeting, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say no. This meeting, any abstentions? This meeting is adjourned.